Now, the biggest storyline from NFL Christmas was Lamar Jackson in this MVP conversation. Because Lamar Jackson had 255 total yards. He had 3 touchdowns. Passer rating, another game where it's off the charts. He's second all-time in passer rating in a season in NFL history. So he's having a historically great season. Do you think that this performance solidified him as the MVP? What do you think, Dels?
He did what I asked him to do when we had this conversation 3 weeks ago. I said, Josh Allen, Lamar, it's a toss-up, but if Lamar wants to get back into it, these next 2 games he can do it because he goes and beats Pittsburgh, who he hadn't beat since 2019, and on Christmas Day, they go out there and dominate Houston. Both those games statistically was great. Eye test-wise, we know how great Lamar Jackson's been all season, and even still, it's like, I don't know if he has necessarily run away with the MVP award, right? Like the Ravens, of course, have won both games, but the Bills still have 1 game on them, but the Ravens beat the Bills. So, I mean, even when we look back 3 weeks ago and had this conversation, Josh Allen, I mean, I guess the Patriots game, he wasn't great, and they barely won that game. So if you want to nitpick, I think that is the one game you could look at. But it's not like Josh Allen had a game in there where you could really talk about him playing so poorly that all of a sudden he's out of the MVP race. So Lamar Jackson, to me, did what he was supposed to do. He went out there and beat Pittsburgh. Now they're back in control of the AFC North. Pittsburgh has their own problems that I don't think we're talking about today, but maybe down the line we'll talk about another collapse in their season. And beating Houston. And you score 30-plus points. The defense, like you mentioned, Joel, has been playing a lot better as of recent. And this is by far their most impressive performance to me because they hadn't played some great offenses, but to shut out Houston, 0 points. I got the safety. 0 points you held Houston to, regardless of their issues and inconsistencies that they have on offense, is, you know, respectable and impressive nonetheless. We see the Jaguars score 20 points. We see the Patriots score 20 points. So we see bad teams put up points. So the fact that you could shut down a defense, regardless of how poorly CJ Stroud and the offense has been this season, is really impressive. But Lamar is going to be my MVP because I love Lamar Jackson. I know, Riv, you've been on Twitter going back and forth about MVP debates, and I'm with you. I'm tired of the debates. If you want to take Lamar as your MVP like me, welcome. Let's do this MVP thing. Lamar's creeping up in the odds-wise. Josh Allen was like minus 700. Now he's minus like 250, and Lamar's like plus 110, so he's getting there. If you still think Josh Allen's the MVP, I'm going to put my hands up and say, sure, Josh Allen's the MVP because he has a bunch of numbers, bunch of EPA stuff, advanced numbers that are going to go his way. But unless one of them, which is highly unlikely because Lamar only has week 18 left, unless Josh Allen's going out there and throws for 6 touchdowns and 500 yards this week and really does something insane, it's going to come down to the wire. And if it comes down to the wire, I do think there's going to be some voter fatigue and people are going to go with Josh Allen because Lamar just got an MVP last year and he disappointed in the playoffs again. Of course, he got the MVP back in 2019, disappointed in the playoffs then. So I do think if it really comes down to it, Josh is going to get the edge. Not even more so because of stats or team record, because it's going to be so close. But I do think it's going to come down to voter fatigue. I do think at the end of the day, voters are going to look at Lamar Jackson. And even though we say the playoffs don't matter, right, because the MVP is a regular season award, voters, we see this across NBA, basketball, and football too. If you're the MVP and then you don't win the championship or you come up short in the playoffs, the next season you're held to a different standard. The next season you have to go above and beyond and be by far and away the best player to get that MVP again and to go back to back. I think Lamar's having one of the best quarterback seasons we've seen in the last decade, but I think Josh Allen has the argument, you know, in terms of one of the most impressive seasons as well.
Listen, you tell us.
Honestly, I really don't give a fuck about this MVP race, truthfully told.
Why is that? I feel like you made that statement, like the not verbatim, but more so like the conversation is becoming disingenuous. That I feel like that's the words you use, which I don't disagree too much. It's you have 2 of the best. It's Mahomes, in my opinion. I think is the best. We don't have to debate that. But then this season, these 2 have been objectively.
Mahomes is his MVP.
Facts. I forgot about that. These 2 have objectively been the best statistical quarterbacks this season. I'm not going to be a lame and say, let's do co-MVPs. I won't do that. Although if they did decide to do that, I would shake whoever decided to do that's hand because these have been so marginally, these 2 separate each other. That's how close it's been. And you have 1 week where Lamar is slightly better. You have some weeks where Josh Allen's slightly better. He had the back-to-back weeks where he goes for, 10 passing touchdowns or five passing touchdowns, 5 rushing touchdowns in 2 games combined. It was something ridiculous. But then you have this unbelievably efficient season by Lamar Jackson. He's going to be the first player ever to potentially be the first player ever to pass for 4,000 yards, rush for 1,000 yards. Most likely will have 40 passing touchdowns as well. Has a chance to do this while also throwing under 5 interceptions. He has the second fewest turnover-worthy plays this season, the 5th most big-time throws, 5th highest big-time throw percentage. Lamar Jackson, to me, I would choose to be the MVP. That is my MVP, also understanding that this is a great supporting cast that he does have on the offensive side, especially once you add Derrick Henry to the mix. But I'm not going to go and gloss over what's going on over there in Buffalo. Of course, just like in Baltimore, the quarterback's the best player on their respective teams. But that doesn't take away how great James Cook has been for them. That doesn't take away from the fact that Khalil Shakir is a really respectable wide receiver, similarly to how Zay Flowers is. Mark Andrews, of course, you give a little respect to Rashad Bateman, too, who I've been very vocal about. I think that he's been an excellent wide receiver, too, for them. There are some great bright spots on both of these teams' offense outside of just the quarterback. But if you ask me, for the fact of what he brings on the rushing side of things, and now on top of it, we're talking about a top 3 passer in the league. That's where I look and I lean Lamar Jackson. But again, if the voters decided co-MVP, this would be one of the few times in history that it would be right.
I don't think we're going to get to that point. There has to be a clear winner. Lamar Jackson, to me, when I've watched all the quarterbacks this year play, he has been the best quarterback this season. There has not been a quarterback that's performed better, that's performed more consistently than Lamar Jackson.
100%.
He hasn't had a game where he completed 9 of his 30 passes against a top-level defense that was 500. That hasn't been Lamar Jackson. His worst game of the season was against the Steelers, and you could argue there were a lot of miscues on his teammates' end as to why their offense didn't function right in that game. Lamar Jackson this year has had a very tough schedule. The Ravens have faced 9 teams that are 500 or better. The Ravens are 7-2 in those games, and Lamar Jackson has performed phenomenally in almost all of those victories.
For sure.
They've had a tougher schedule than the Bills, and Lamar Jackson has better numbers than Josh Allen, a better passer rate and a QBR similar. He has more passing yards. He has more passing touchdowns. He has more rushing yards. I think Lamar Jackson has been the best quarterback in the NFL this season.
Agree.
But the most valuable conversation always goes back to what you're working with, your supporting cast. And while Josh Allen has great weapons around him, and I think this is the most help he's had on offense in his career, the Ravens wide receivers this year, they're top 3 in target separation. The Bills are near the bottom of the league. And you could say that Lamar helps his wide receivers get that higher target separation because he extends plays. But Josh Allen extends plays too. So it's not like this is just a Lamar thing where Josh Allen is a Jared Goff pocket passer. No, he's extending plays for his receivers to get open as well. He's just throwing into tighter windows, and that's just been the fact this season. I think between these two candidates, it's been such a toxic conversation because the goalpost every year for MVP moves to a different type of standard. Last year, the best numbers by a quarterback was Dak Prescott. He had the best numbers. Josh Allen did have the most touchdowns. He had the most yards, but he also had the turnovers. If you look at a quarterback that had those numbers with lower turnover numbers, it was Dak Prescott. And last year, the Cowboys went 12-5, and they won their division. It's not like they lost. They just lost those important games down the stretch, and the narrative propped Dak lower in the MVP conversation. But if we're going by sheer numbers, Dak should have been MVP last year, but Lamar won because the Ravens went 14-3. They were the number 1 seed in the NFL. This year, is that the same standard? It's not, because if you're looking at the number 1 team in the NFL, it's the Kansas City Chiefs. Mahomes hasn't had the best numbers, but he still played like a top 10 quarterback. He leads the NFL in game-winning drives. He leads the NFL in fourth-quarter comebacks, and he's the number 1 quarterback on third downs, and he's made clutch plays when he's needed to. But Lamar's getting the MVP, or he is at least pushed by a lot of people to win it because he is having the best season, not because of winning, but because of stats. So I think the conversation, it kind of moves year to year, and I think that's where the frustration stems from. But what Lamar Jackson is doing is special, and this is why I made that tweet about I don't care about the conversation because it is dismissing greatness at an all-time level that we're viewing from both these quarterbacks.
100%.
If Josh Allen doesn't win an MVP, the last 4 years, he's going to have the best numbers by any quarterback all time to not win an MVP in that 4-year stretch. Josh Allen has consistently...
Damn, better than Breeze?
I mean, you look at this 4-year stretch from Josh Allen. You get his total numbers, his touchdown numbers. I mean, this is going to be one of the best stretches that doesn't end up in an MVP in the history of the league. But what Lamar Jackson is doing right now, over the last 2 seasons, Lamar Jackson is 24-8. He has 72 total touchdowns to 17 interceptions. He has an above 100 passer rating. He's averaging 291 yards per game. And the reason why I used the last 2 years is because 2 years ago, the NFL collectively didn't want Lamar Jackson.
Crazy.
There were people that reported to reporters to inform us that they actively didn't want Lamar Jackson, like what the Atlanta Falcons did. We don't want him. We aren't interested.
So dumb.
Just 2 years ago, that was the narrative around Lamar Jackson. Just 6 years ago, there were NFL scouts at the draft combine that wanted him to work out at wide receiver. I can understand the loyalty and admiration people have for Lamar Jackson because this is one of the most dominant 2-year stretches from a quarterback we have ever seen in the history of the NFL. And this is a fact. Lamar Jackson has done double the amount of work to get the same recognition as his peers. When he won MVP, there were still question marks about him. Even though he was the most accurate passer at age 21 in the history of the NFL, there were still
we had dudes
questions
saying, "Come on, Lamar," about him. Shit was crazy, bro. That was crazy, man.
Those narratives were out of line, Dels. Those narratives were out of line.
Fucking Joel's over here trying to get a clip out of Lamar.
Come on,
Meanwhile,
dude,
Del's like, you know what?
man.
Fuck you, pal.
You understand that. You know, those were the narratives around Lamar Jackson. So Lamar Jackson,
good for you.
He's had to do double the amount of work to get the same recognition. And I think that story speaks to everybody, anybody that's overlooked. I mean, Lamar Jackson just a couple years ago went on First Take and he said that he wanted to improve his game as a quarterback and he wanted to be like Drew Brees. And he's gotten to that level. He's completed 70% of his passes this year. And every year he's excelled. Since Todd Monken has gone to this offense and since they made this offense more pass-friendly, Lamar Jackson has proven that he's just not a great player playing a quarterback position. He's a great quarterback in general. And, you know, this season that he's having is an all-time great season. It's the second best season pass rating-wise in the history of the NFL. Mm-hmm. So if he wins, it's deserved. But if Josh Allen wins, it's deserved too. I mean, you're not about to tell me that Josh Allen doesn't deserve to be most valuable player. People were talking about the Bills coming into the season like they weren't going to make the playoffs. They lost so many things. They lost so many veterans on that roster. Josh Allen has been the main thing that's stayed the same, the common denominator, and he's having another great season. And so you can't discount what he's doing either.
To your Drew Brees point, Josh Allen needs 3 total touchdowns to be the first player in NFL history with 5 consecutive 40-touchdown seasons. Drew Brees did it 3 times. Tom Brady did it twice. A-Rod did it 2 times. And Brett Favre did it twice. So that's where the Drew Brees 4 years.
40 total.
Yes.
Got it.
40 total touchdowns.
Which
Drew
is still
Brees,
insane.
Drew probably threw 40 of them shits 3 times.
And also, 5 bands. He did that 4 times. Drew's crazy. But Josh is also, I think, a future Hall of Famer.
Yeah, this conversation has just become stupid. Because I feel like the shit I've been seeing today and yesterday about how he's getting like a Steve Nash MVP and how
Joel Embiid.
I've heard Steve Nash.
It's gotten that bad.
Well, Ryan Clark said Charles Barkley.
And then he said Steve Nash 2 minutes later in the same exact clip. So you went from Charles Barkley to Steve Nash, and then I hear Bart Scott talking, and it's just like...
In no world is Lamar Jackson, Michael Jordan, and Josh Allen Charles Barkley.
It's truly...
It doesn't make sense.
It's astonishing.
So who's Josh Allen in that world?
I don't think none of them are
None of them are Michael Jordan.
No, I'm not calling Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan is Patrick Mahomes. Yeah. But I'm saying, who are we calling his equivalent?
I don't know, but there ain't no fucking Steve Nash.
No. Charles Barkley also. I feel like we know ball. Charles Barkley, that's not a crazy slight.
Charles Barkley's like...
That's a slight when you're trying to say somebody's Michael Jordan.
But like Charles Barkley, until Timmy came into town, was regarded as the best power forward ever.
That's a slight.
Being the best at a position?
No, that's a slight because you're
think
saying Josh Allen is only going to win MVP because it's a
they don't wanna give it to
thing.
MJ
No,
every
the
year.
way it sounded was wrong. I agree.
Yeah, they like Charles Barkley won MVP because they didn't want to give it to MJ every year, and I get that. You don't want to give it, even though MJ's the best player in the league. You don't want to keep giving it to him.
So Mahomes should be MVP.
Probably every year of the year. Like, but football is different than basketball, so like I don't.
Mahomes hasn't been the best quarterback this year.
Yeah, so it's like it's so different.
In high leverage situations, that fucker's
Yeah,
on.
he's a demon. Listen, Lamar fans, Buffalo, Josh Allen fans, you guys fucking suck because it's been nonstop, just straight disrespect and clowning one another. And it's
crazy.
No. He has a fucking.
I seen it. It's just been nonstop disrespect and clowning one
How do you
another.
sleep at night?
He's a sicko, bro.
Comfortable.
Is Mahomes the only one on there?
It's just Mahomes.
It really is just. I got to get a Jordan Love one soon.
Like you don't have the one where you can have 20 pictures just like.
No, I do,
put me
but
on
right
that,
now
yeah.
it's on. Yeah, it is only Mahomes, and then relationship photos.
It's gonna get to the AI ones of Mahomes butt naked.
Both of us
You
smiling.
think he has a big one? Be honest. Wow.
I can't answer that question.
He was thinking about it.
Called him Big Bro. You might as well
That's
answer
a
the
wild
question.
question.
Yeah,
I don't look at my big bro like that.
Yeah, it's crazy.
That's a good ass rebuttal. I respect
That was
that.
great.
That was a good ass rebuttal. Yeah, I don't care who wins it. Honestly, like if you want to have Josh Allen's case, the man has broken damn near 14 records this year, records that have been sitting for like 81 years. If you want the Lamar case, well, he has the best statistical numbers this year by far. He's been the most consistent, best quarterback this year. I've just grown tired of the fact that, like you mentioned, we change the narrative every year. MVP races used to be fun. We used to just talk about who's been the best player on one of the best teams. It used to be like who's having a better year. Now it's like, oh, this guy stinks. Oh, this guy stinks. Oh, this guy's team is better. Just, like people were bringing up fucking Derrick Henry in Lamar Jackson's MVP case. Like, why do I care if Derrick Henry has 1,500 yards? The shit Lamar's doing is ridiculous. And I feel like the conversation has been so disingenuous on both sides, from fans to people who, you know, were supposed to change the landscape by talking about the sports on the big TVs. And I feel like they're not being fair. I feel like now they're making it seem like Lamar has this overwhelming gap. I saw fucking Swiper try to put Joe Burrow in the conversation.
That
With
was
all due
crazy.
respect,
I don't
I hate it
hate it.
because now we're just completely wiping away.
If Joe
the
makes
winning.
the playoffs, it's not.
It's not
an
like-
idea.
No 9 and 8 team is better
we're
than
not doing
MVP,
that.
bro.
But if they
It's
make
not,
the
no.
playoffs, it is mainly because of what Joe Burrow had done.
What?
If
How-
we're being honest, if we're being
my gosh.
honest about what
He's
Joe Burrow's
not-
doing right now,
It's insane.
when the Ravens and when the Bills make the playoffs, because they're both
course.
locked.
They're locked already.
But
it's because of Josh
Can we
Allen,
live-
Lamar Jackson.